So jumping to the end of this project, what happened with the students?
Well, there was a mixed result. The students did what sometimes happened. That is to say, the students looked at the data and they produced their best guess as to what would happen. And they also tried to maximize the rate of profit, the percentage profit for the bank. Mm-hmm. So they came back and said to the bank, here is a way for you to make a decent rate of return by selling to roughly 5% of the target market. Mm-hmm. You know, if you capture 5% of the target market, you could make quite a good rate of return on that. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, this was not answering the chief executive's question of the bank. It wasn't answering the requirements of the marketing director who'd authorized the project. This particular bank, like a lot of leading companies, had a target for the minimum market share it would accept in any market. It wanted to have enough market share to be able to be strong on price. It wanted to have enough volume of business to have good economies of scale, unit costs, basically to be strong against competition if the competition headed up. So for that bank, the rule of thumb was somewhere between 10 and 15% was a meaningful target. It would never consciously go in at less. What the group had said, our best guess, maximum rate of profit, achieved at 5%, end, bang.
Sure.
Now, if the marketing director of the bank wanted to go to the board and say, give me funds to put in dollars to get dollars back, and by the way, I've met the test of 10%, he hasn't got an answer from the group. He simply doesn't have anything to say to the board. So at that point, the project for him doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So you might say, okay, what could the group have done better? What would have been useful? What would have been needed is for the group to say, if the bank wanted to get 10%, here's how it would have to penetrate the markets. Here is the cost base it would need to achieve. Here's the level of retaliation it would need to avoid triggering from other players. Whatever the sort of the data, financial and non-financial, the performance inside the selling system, which would have generated 10% of the market, and then shown what the dollar rate of return was, not the percentage rate of return. You know, big percent of nothing is not very much, but if you more than double it, or double it up to 10%, then clearly you're increasing your scale. You're getting more dollars, and you're possibly getting better costs anyway doing that. So basically, the professional job would have been to say, even if they believe not only this was the best profit and the only feasible profit, boards don't need that. They want to know how far they are away from the minimum 10%, and they want to know for themselves what it would take to lift them to the 10%. They want access to the student's model, and they want to look at the quality of the data, which either says 10% is or is not feasible. So the group could have lifted its grade very, very strongly if it had done that basic analysis. So never give a no answer, which is based on the student's own view of the data. Give a yes, but only if, based on the facts and the model. Then it's the client's job to attack your data, attack your model, and then take the risk, if it chooses to, of jumping. But you always let clients take negative decisions. You never take your own personal guess and then say that should drive a major company.
Sure.
So by doing that, those students had disqualified themselves for a top job in the company. They simply weren't thinking like directors. So that was the first major thing that they could have done.
Can I just come back on that?
Please,
Because that illustrates a few themes, certainly in research design, that somewhere they lost the chief executive's question.
Yes.
Which should have been right at the start, and all the way through target executive summary. They should have had in mind the chief executive viewpoint. Second piece of advice is that consultants always need to have a kind of a can-do mentality. And so it is always about how can the client achieve their goals, and that's the advice they can give. But the third one is, you say, that it is then quantified with, or qualified with, not unless or only because. So if you want to achieve this target, these are the assumptions you'll have to make, and then it's over to you, client, to make that decision as to whether they are some assumptions that you are happy with. Which, I think that very nicely illustrates a number of the points that we wish to make through these videos.
Do you want to ask me about one more thing they might have done?
Yes, and was there one other thing that the students might have done to improve their grade?
Well, let's go back to this situation where the students are offering 5% of the market, the client wants a minimum of 10 and a maximum of reasonable target of 15%. If you simply go for 10%, you're going to get your costs down. So there's real value from simply even trying to sell twice as much. Mm-hmm. But there's an interesting feature here. They're trying to sell leasing, funds for tractors. The farmers want to buy tractors. And it's quite likely that if anybody's taking risks, there will be insurance where, again, they might possibly be able to offer an economy of scale in providing insurance. So one of the most interesting things of all, data, dollars, and deals, is actually to look for deals. So a really aggressive, creative group of students might have said, if you're going for 15% of the leasing market for tractors, could you find a tractor company that wants to break into Spain? Can you get a bulk demand for 15% of all the tractor supplies? So you get discount on the leasing, discount on the tractors, and if insurance matters, can you find an insurance company that wants to penetrate that market that's willing to do a bulk deal for all of the insurance? And let's cross-check back to make sure that the competitors don't have too much power to retaliate because they're making too much profit elsewhere and they wouldn't want a price cut. Work out that scenario as well. If you do a thing like that, what you're doing is you're generating new deals at the top management level. And that's exactly what businesses want from MBAs if they're going to employ them as future leaders. So to qualify yourself as a future leader, you need to be looking for those innovative deals. And that would have been another great distinction producing event. This is reminding me of the most successful IB project, the consulting project that I ever personally managed, where the student was a deal maker. And the student was doing a project inside a bank, and he very quickly generalized to all sorts of customers. He was doing deals even before the IB project was over, and this guy made $1 million in his first year of employment with the bank. Within 2 years, he was a welcome guest at the British Cabinet Office, advising on various aspects of banking and finance. And the last time I met him in MBS, I discovered he just started his own small bank. So that's an extreme example of the innovative, aggressive deal maker, which is the absolute top level of business analysis. So an MBA consulting group should be interested in deals, and it should be interested in innovating deals and innovating boldly across new sets of players.